Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to this session of Learn Design Pattern and Architecture Pattern step by step with a project. And this complete series we are going to go and complete in flat 8 hours. So in 8 hours, we'll be completing most of the important patterns and architecture pattern in this project, which we are going to just start. Now the first question which will probably come into your mind is that, is it really possible to cover all the design pattern in 8 hours, and that also in a single project, and that also with architecture pattern? My answer is no, not at all. But in this project, we will be covering almost 60% of the Gang of 4 design pattern plus some other patterns which are other than Gang of 4. As well as we will be covering at least 40 to 50% of the architecture patterns. So yes, it is not possible to cover all the patterns in a project, because design patterns cannot be forcibly used in a project, right? But I can tell you that in whatever project you are working at this moment, at least 20 to 30% design patterns are already available. So via this project, my goal is to give you an actual idea of how design pattern and architecture patterns are used in a project. But in case you are concerned saying that no, I want to learn all the design patterns and that also I want to go step by step, what you can do is you can follow our video series, which we have on questmonvd.com, where we have explained 40 to 50 design patterns. So you can see here factory pattern, abstract factory, builder, prototype, adapter, decorator, name that pattern, and it has been completed in this series, right? Now there are two ways of learning design patterns. One is if you are a person who wants to go concept by concept, code by code, then here it is. You can see that, log into your QuestMonVD account and see this section step by step like this. And the other way is by doing a project. Take up a project, start coding, and let the design patterns fall naturally along the way. But now, if you are asking me the suggestion, if you are asking me saying that, tell us, so what is good? Is going code by code and pattern by pattern is good, or the project-based approach is good? My personal choice is the project-based approach. So start with the project-based approach, but as I've told that I can complete 60 to 70% design pattern, the remaining 30% are still left out, right? So those 30% design pattern you can go and watch from here. And second, what I'll be doing, when I'm teaching you this project, I will be telling you to go and see more about the design pattern in this section. So I'll be guiding you at right places to hop to this series and then come back in the project. So my advice here would be to go via the project-based approach and not via design pattern after design pattern approach. I'll tell you why. Design patterns are thought processes, and thought processes, cannot be explained via just sample code or PPTs or some UML diagrams. If you see on the internet, a lot of people explain design patterns by showing UML diagrams, by showing examples like cars and trees and rivers, which does not make any sense. We need to do a real project. We need to feel design pattern. We need to understand it, that in what kind of scenario it has to be used. So the best way to learn design pattern is by doing a project. So I would suggest that you follow this video series, and as time comes, I will tell you to go and see the appropriate design pattern from this section here, right? Now, before I move ahead, let us, just talk about one myth, which people have about design patterns. A lot of people think that, in order to do a good architecture or create a good architecture, we need to implement all design patterns in a project. Also, I have seen that some of the developers try to force design patterns. They say, oh, come on, let's implement factory pattern. Oh, come on, let's go ahead and implement singleton pattern. But the fact is, patterns come out naturally. They are completely on demand as per the scenario. So it is a very horrible myth that you need to force design pattern or you need to implement design patterns forcibly in your project or implement all design patterns in your project. But the fact is that patterns are natural and they should come on demand. Now, before we move ahead and we start defining design patterns, we start looking at the project, let me spend 2 or 3 minutes here discussing about difference between design pattern, architecture pattern and architecture style. Believe me guys, I have worked with so many developers across different geographical location with different culture. But when it comes about differentiating between these three things, people just use these words interchangeably. So these three things, they must be looking very similar for you, but they have a huge difference between them. When you say design pattern is actually at a code level. So when someone says, okay, this is a factory design pattern, he should actually show you some kind of a pseudocode. He should show you some kind of a logic. When you say it's an architecture pattern, then it's only block level diagrams. For example, model view controller is an architecture pattern where we say, okay, there is a controller, then there is a model, then there is a view. The first hit comes to the controller and then it picks up the model and the view. So over there, we just draw block diagrams. It's a 30,000 feet level view of your project. And when we talk about architecture style, they are just principles. They are just one-liners. For example, REST is an architecture style which follows HTTP protocol. So remember, design pattern, it is at the code level, at the pseudocode level. Somebody has to give you some kind of a pseudocode, then it becomes a design pattern. Architecture pattern, just overall blocks, like as I've said, model, view model, or UI layer and then model layer and then your data access layer. Now, these layers, how they are implemented, what code goes into that is not shown here. And architecture principles, it is just principles, just one-liners, which we need to follow. Now, how do you follow it? By using C# or Java or whatever, right? It is all up to you. So design pattern at a very code level, architecture pattern, it's more of a 30,000 feet level, and then architecture style, which is just principle. So next time, when you say that, okay, this is a design pattern, I expect code from you. Next time when you say, okay, this is an architecture pattern, I expect some kind of a higher level diagram from you, right? And here are some examples of design pattern, architecture pattern and architecture style. So architecture patterns are normally your gang of 4 pattern like factory pattern, singleton pattern. Architecture pattern are more block level, which says, okay, model view controller, model view model, model view presenter. And the architecture style is just style, it's just one-liners, it has principles. So for example, REST is architectural style, which gives importance to HTTP, so we have REST, we have SOA, we have IOC. So these are principles, these are architectural style. So before we move ahead with the project, let us go and define design pattern. If you see the official design pattern definition on the web, if you go and search design pattern definition, everywhere you'll find this definition saying that design patterns are time-tested solutions for software architecture problems. Again, I repeat, most of the times, this is the definition what is given on the internet. Design patterns are time-tested solution for software architecture problems. But believe me guys, after working 15-20 years in IT industry and after doing a lot of designing and architecting, I came to one conclusion, that design pattern is nothing but it is object-oriented programming principles. It helps you to understand object-oriented programming problems easily. So let me put an unofficial definition ahead. It's because of my experience I'm putting this definition. Design patterns are nothing but they are best practices or time-tested practices for object-oriented programming problems. And when you are doing design patterns, you will suddenly feel that, okay, this is polymorphism. So this is polymorphism plus inheritance. Oh, this looks to be encapsulation. So, as you do pattern after pattern, at one moment of time, you will realize that it is nothing but interfaces, abstract classes, inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation. So yes, design patterns, when you start doing practically, it is nothing but solving object-oriented programming problems in a much better manner. And in case you are too worried about this definition what I've given, because definitely I'm not the official person to define definitions here, but people who actually created Gang of Four, even they have admitted in their interview. And if you go and see this small interview, where one of the persons from Gang of Four, that is Mr. Gamma, when he was interviewed by Bill, he said that patterns as a whole can help people learn object-oriented thinking. It can help you to leverage polymorphism, help you to design composition, delegations, help you to make a more pluggable system. So, it is not just my feeling, my understanding here, but it also comes from the main source. They also admit that yes, it is nothing but it helps you to think object-oriented programming problems in a much better manner. So without wasting time, let us go ahead and discuss about the project. So this project is extremely simple project, and in order to make the learnings easy and to not complicate things on the first go, what I've done is that I have divided this project into various phases. So at this moment, we will concentrate just on phase 1. In phase 1, we have just 6 to 7 requirements. Okay. So let us concentrate on that requirements and let us try to, architect this system, and let us see what design pattern comes up. So what is this School Shop project? This School Shop project is a small software which a company wants to make. This company is a large retail shopping mall, and it has chain malls in Mumbai and Pune city. And the company wants a very, very simple customer management system for their shops. It has the following requirements, which they want to fulfill. So first, requirement number 1, application would be capturing 3 fields: customer name, the name of the customer, phone number, bill amount, how much is the bill date, and the address of the customer. So 5 fields, this application should capture in phase 1. The second requirement is, in phase 1, there are 2 types of customers, which they have included. Okay. So one is a lead. A lead is a person who comes to the shop, but he does not buy anything. He just inquires. And a customer is a person who actually comes and buys things and does a financial transaction. So requirement number 2, the system at this moment, should support 2 types of customers. One is a lead and the other is a customer. Now, the customer and lead have different types of validation. They differ in terms of validation. Now, a lead who comes to the shop, he does not buy anything, right? So for him, bill amount and bill date is not compulsory. But yes, at least he has to give his name and phone number, so that tomorrow probably my marketing people can call him up and say that, there is a discount or something. So when it is a lead, only customer name and phone number is compulsory. But for customer, all the fields are compulsory. And the system should have a provision to add new validations rule seamlessly, right? Seamlessly. This is very important. So in other words, tomorrow if I say, okay, now I want to go and add a new customer type called as gold customer, for him, these validation rules are true. So system should be flexible enough, to add this new rule without doing a lot of changes across the system. That is the third requirement. The fourth requirement is, system should have the ability to add, update and delete customer data. The fifth requirement, which is again a very important requirement. For now, this system will use SQL Server, and to connect to SQL Server, it will use ADO.NET as the data layer technology. But tomorrow, the system would probably use new data access technologies like Entity Framework or LINQ. So this migration from one data layer to other data layer should also happen seamlessly. We don't have to do a lot of changes across the system. So that is requirement number 5. And the last requirement is, systems should have an ability of canceling a modification. So if a customer, if the end user is going and editing a record here, right? So if there are some issues with the updated values, he should have the ability to cancel. So this project basically has 6 requirements. First, there are 5 fields. Second one, there are 2 types of customers at this moment. They are having different validations, and tomorrow we should be able to plug in new customer type into this. It should have the basic CRUD functionality. And the 5th point is that basically we should be able to migrate from one data access layer technology to other data access layer technologies seamlessly. So this is the phase 1 requirement of this project. And in case it is not clear from the video, this requirement, you can go ahead and you can download this requirement from questponvt.com. It's a very simple 1-pager Word document, where we have put this requirement. So you can read through this, because the other part of the whole video will revolve around this project. So if this project is not understood, then you won't love the further classes, right? So it's important that you understand this project, read it once and twice, and then continue with the video. So let us move ahead first, and let us first try to identify classes. Let us identify our entities, and then as we do the project, let design pattern come, when it has to come. So first thing is to identify entities. Now, what exactly are entities? Entities are nothing but, they are things what you see in the real world. For example, a person is an entity, a living object is an entity, city. So these things are actually entities. Entities in technical world or in object-oriented programming world, we also term them as objects. In short, entities are nothing but nouns. A good architect, when he reads a requirement, one of the things which keeps going at his backend is that whatever are the nouns, they become classes and entities. So you can see, from our Cool Shop project at this moment, Mumbai, Pune, lead, customer, these are some of the nouns I have identified. Now remember that this approach has to be taken very wisely. You can come up with a lot of unconcerned nouns, which has nothing to do with your software. For example, I can see that, there are nouns like, the Cool Shop or Mumbai and Pune, but they really don't have direct impact on my project. Must be there are some data which I will store in my database, like a city master or something, but they really don't have an impact as such on my code. But you can see, like now, customer and lead are definitely nouns, which I would be dealing with in my project, right? So from here, I'm dropping off 2-3 nouns like Mumbai, Pune, Cool Shop. But yes, these 2 nouns, that is customer and lead, are definitely very important for me. So the first thing is to identify entities, try to first identify the nouns. And this approach, please do take up very carefully, right? So that, you don't come up with unnecessary nouns, which you will try to create entities of. Now these objects or these entities needs to have properties and methods. To identify the properties, the way to go ahead is by identifying pronouns. Pronouns actually talk more about the noun. For example, you can see we have customer name. So customer name actually talks more about the noun. We have customer address, that talks more about the noun. So whatever talks more about the noun becomes properties. And whatever actions, these nouns are doing, for example, ordering a product or asking for a refund, those becomes the methods of the objects or entities. So just I'm trying to lay down a rule here. Rule number 1 for architects, for people who are trying to become architects or people who are trying to learn design patterns. Whenever you take a requirement at the back end somewhere, don't take it as a hard and fast rule, but at back end somewhere, you should think about that your nouns actually becomes objects. Pronouns becomes the properties for that object, and actions becomes, or the verbs becomes the actions or the methods or the functions, for that object. Now, in order that these entities, these objects, become live into your computer, you need to write some kind of a code for it. These code or these logics you write in something called as classes. Classes are nothing but templates. So basically you write your code into the class, and this class is lying into your hard disk. and then you need to instantiate this class, and then your entity comes live into your RAM. So to instantiate this class, we need to use something called as a new keyword. I'm sure that a lot of people who have already done programming, they are aware of what I'm saying. So basically, if you ask me, object-oriented programming is a 3-step process. The first thing is you need to create the class, write the code for it. Then you need to instantiate the class, and then you can go and start performing operations on that object or on that entity. Now, creation of objects goes through 3 phases. Okay, so when you say that you want to actually make an entity live inside your computer, you need to actually at least do these steps at least. So first thing is you need to go and write a class. You need to go and write the logic for that entity. Second, you need to go and use the new keyword and instantiate that entity inside your computer. And the last one is, you need to go and interact with those objects and achieve the necessary functionality. So any kind of object-oriented programming problems, or I'll say design problems, which comes into the class creation process, which is more static in nature, falls into structural design pattern category. So we have a structural design pattern category which will address problems regarding class creation, inheritance, so those kind of structural issues, they will come into structural design category. Second one is object creation, instantiating the object. So when you're using the new keyword, any kind of problem associated with instantiation will come into creational design category. And finally, when your object starts running, they use polymorphism, and they do typecasting and etc. So on runtime, if you have any kind of architectural problems, it will come into the behavioral category. So you can see, as I've said previously also, design pattern is nothing but it is object-oriented programming. So it solves problems around object-oriented programming. So you can see by this view here, or by this image here, you can easily make out that design pattern will revolve around classes, objects, and instantiation. So now that we have analyzed the requirement, and when we read the requirement, we use the noun, pronoun, and the verb approach to conclude entities. And we said that we have 2 types of entities. One is a customer and the other one is a lead. So let us go ahead and create a class library, and let us go ahead and try to create the business layer. Business layer means, the library in which our business logic will reside. So I'm going to go here and create a class library, a DLL, and let me name this project as customer project phase 1. Okay, so this is the phase 1 of the project. Now this class library which I've created at this moment, I would like to go and name this library as the library where my business logic will reside. So let me go and put a very nice namespace here. So rather than just putting customer project phase 1, I would like to name this namespace as my middle layer. So a lot of people can say this is the middle layer. Some people term this as the domain layer. Some people term this as a business layer. Whatever layer you want to term this as, but this is the layer where your business logic will reside. So as we said, we have 2 kinds of classes. 2 classes, I'm sorry, at this moment. One is the customer class and the other one is a lead class, right? And if you remember, we said that there are 5 properties which we had identified by using the pronoun approach. We said that we need the customer name, we need the phone number, we need the bill amount, we need the bill date, we need the address, and so on. So you can see all of these 5 properties here. And also for the lead also we have the same kind of properties, right? We said that lead and customer are different types of customer. So the customer is actually the customer who actually buys it, while lead is a kind of a customer who actually just comes and inquires about it, but he actually does not do a transaction. Now I do understand that a lot of people would be screaming over there saying that, hey, you have duplicated all these properties, you need to move it to a common class and so on. Believe me guys, I'm going to do that. But the best way to learn programming is, or the best way to learn architecting is by doing mistakes and then gradually improving on the top of it, right? So let me commit these mistakes. Let me see that, how I can improve on it in the later stages. And in that way, you can also see this architecture evolution. So we identified the entities by using the noun strategy. We identified the properties of the entities by using the pronoun strategy. We identified the actions by using the verb strategy. Now it is time to identify the relationship between these entities. Now primarily there are two kinds of relationship between entities. One is a relationship and the other one is a using relationship or has a relationship. For example, you can see on your video there, Shiv is a son of his father. So it is more of a parent-child relationship. While Shiv uses a car or Shiv has a shirt, it is more of a using relationship. Now, if you look at a requirement, in the requirement, it is clearly said that lead is a type of customer with less validations. I would suggest you to go and read the requirement again. It clearly says that lead is a type of customer. In other words, the lead and the customer is having a kind of a parent-child relationship. So probably both of these guys, can be inherited from a common class. So let us go ahead and create a common class here. So I'm going to go and create a common class here called as customer base, right? So this is a base class. It's a class, which will have all of these properties over here, right? And both these classes, that is the customer class, will inherit from the customer base, as well as the lead class will inherit from the customer base. So both of them will actually inherit from the customer base class. And also we had one requirement regarding validation, right? We said that when it is only a lead, then only customer name and phone number is compulsory. But for a customer, all the fields are compulsory. So that means, the difference between the customer and the lead is in terms of validation, right? So what I'll do is in the customer base, let me go here and define a method here saying validate, right? So this method will help to validate a customer, but this method would be overridden by the customer and the lead as per their requirement, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and make this method as virtual. Okay, so by defining a method as virtual, what happens is, your child classes, means for example, you can see over here I have the customer class. So the customer class can go and override the validate method and he can put all the validations here, while the lead class will only go and validate for customer name and phone number, right? And in the base class, because this is a base class, what I will do is over here I will just go and throw a new exception saying that not implemented, right? In other words, this will be implemented by the child classes. So in the customer, all the validations will happen. So in other words, here the customer name is compulsory, right? So if the customer name length is equal to 0, then I will go and throw a new exception saying customer name is required. And in the same way, I have put validations for all the other fields as well. So you can see phone number is compulsory, bill amount is compulsory, bill date cannot exceed today's date, address is compulsory, etc. But for the lead, only the name and the phone number is compulsory, right? So you can see now we have the customer and lead, which are actually concrete types, and they are inheriting from the customer base, and then they are overriding the validate method, as per their requirements, as per their need. So now let us go ahead and create a user interface. And in the user interface, let us go ahead and consume this business logic, what we have created, right? So this is actually our middle layer. So let me go and rename this. And also I would like to mention here, I'm creating this project in Visual Studio 2010. Why am I creating in a backward version? So that people who are using 2012, 2013 and 2015, or must be 2016 tomorrow, you can easily migrate this project and see the code. So I'm trying to create in a version which is 5 years back, so that you can just do a next wizard and see this code. Let me also go and rename this class here to like customer.cs or something, right? So let me go ahead here and add a new project. So let me add a Windows form here. So I'll say win form customer, right? And there is a form. Let me rename this form to a nice name. So actually I'm creating a Windows UI to consume this middle layer or the domain objects what we have created. At this moment UI for me is irrelevant actually, because I want to just ensure that my middle layer and my data access layer are properly reusable, right? But I do need a UI to test it, right? So I'm taking the WinForm, but feel free to use other user interfaces like ASP.NET, WebForm, or must be console applications, etc. So I'll say here FRM customer, and on this form, you can see I have put all the necessary user interface, which will help us to fill data into our domain object or into our customer class, right? So here is my UI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and consume this middle layer inside my UI WinForm customer. So I'm going to go and consume this middle layer inside my WinForm customer here, and over here I will say using middle layer, right? So now remember that we have two types of customers. One is a lead and one is a simple customer, right? So what I've done is in this UI I have created a very simple combo box. So you can see that I have a simple drop down, I'll say rather, and this drop down helps me to select what kind of customer I want to use. So if I select lead and if I do validate, then accordingly the lead validations will fire. And if I go and select customer, then customer validations will fire, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to my UI. So depending on situation, I will say your private customer. So either this UI will go and create a customer object, or probably it will go and create a lead object, right? So in this combo box selected change event, what I'll say here is if the customer type dot text, which is selected, if it is customer, then please go ahead and create the object of the customer, or else go ahead and create the object of the lead. So I'll say here cust is equal to new customer, or else go ahead and create the object of lead, right? And in the validate button, again here also depending on what is selected, I will either call the validate of the customer, or I will either call the validate of the lead. Now there is one big problem with the approach at this moment. Before I talk about the problem, let me talk about what is a sign of a good software architecture. If you want to see, or if you want to test, I will say that a software architecture is good or not, you should see that how the software architecture reacts, when changes happens. Whenever a change happens in a software, and if you have to change at 10 places, then there is a problem with the software architecture. If you see at this moment, tomorrow if I go and add a new customer type over here, so let us say I go ahead and I add a new customer class called as gold customer, then look at the places where I have to make changes. First thing, change number 1, I have to go and add that new type here in the form. Second, I need to go and add in my combo selected event, I need to go and add one more if condition. Then in the validate event, I need to add one more if condition. So I have to make changes at 3 places. And please note, at this moment, this is a very, very simple form. If I have 10 such forms like this, you can think about that, what kind of changes can happen in my system. So a good software architecture is tested, when the changes happen. And if you are changing in a lot of places, that means you have not architected your software well. So first thing is, let us see that if we can minimize these changes from at least, 3 to 1. Okay, so let us go step by step. So at least, can we bring down these number of code changes, right? So the first thing what I can really do over here is I can use polymorphism. So in other words, if you remember, both of our classes, that is customer and lead, inherits from the customer base class, right? So what I can do is I can just go and create one reference for the whole UI. So I can say, okay, this is customer base, and depending on situation, the customer base can now point towards new customer, or he can point towards a lead, right? And then in the validate, I can just say cus.validate. So if you see now, when I go and add a new type, right, I have to only go and change in this section here. That's it. So you can see, because of polymorphism, this is polymorphism, right? Wherein the parent class can point towards his child classes on runtime. What do you mean by polymorphism? Polymorphism means change as per situation. So you can see here, my cust object is actually of customer base type, and depending on situations, it can point to customer or it can point to the lead object. Now, one of my personal belief is that the biggest gift from object-oriented programming is polymorphism. If you see polymorphism in our real world, also in our real life, polymorphism means, depending on situation, you change yourself. For example, at this moment I am teaching you, so I will not be talking about my family work. So I am a teacher at this moment. But the time I go and meet my kids, I play with them, I don't talk about my office work. So at that time I am a dad, and I just want to ensure that I don't talk any kind of official work. So in real life also, people achieve decoupling. Decoupling means, that, whatever is happening in your office, you don't take it home, or whatever is happening in your home, you don't take it office, when you actually do polymorphism. And the same here in object-oriented world also, polymorphism is the biggest gift by which you can achieve decoupling, right? By which you can ensure that when change happens at one place, it does not does not go all over the places, right? So here also, by using polymorphism, you can see at this moment I'm using polymorphism, and because of that I have minimized my changes from 3 to 1, right? But still I have to still make changes. In other words, if you see now, if somebody goes and adds a new type, so the first thing is he has to go and add the class over here. After that, he has to again go back and add a new if condition here in this combo change. And think about it, if you have 10 screens like that, then you have to go and do it at 10 places, right? So somehow we have to also get rid of this if condition as well from this UI. Now, in order to remove this if condition from here, what we really need to do is we need to get rid of this new keyword. Remember, what is the whole goal of this exercise we are trying to do? Removing if conditions, or removing the strongly typed classes, right? Or concrete classes. The goal is that when I go and add a new customer type, I shouldn't be making changes here. So if I don't want to make changes in my UI, then I need to get rid of these final classes or concrete classes, right? And in order to get rid of these classes, I need to somehow ensure that the creation of these objects goes into some central class. So in other words, I need to give this object creation to some other library, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and add a new class here or a new library here who will take away this object creation process from here into that class library. Now I would like to go and name this class library as factory. Why factory? Because it creates things, right? So I'm going to go here and add a new project, and I will say this project name as factory customer. And in this let me go and create this class as a static class. So I'll say this is my factory, right? So this factory class will be responsible for my object creation, right? So I'm going to go and add a reference to the middle layer here. So now what I will do here is I will say public create, right? So create the customer depending on the type of customer, right? And what I will do is I will move this if condition from here to this factory class. So over here now I'll say, okay, if the type of customer, if the type of cust is customer, then return a new customer, or else return a new lead, right? So you can see now this class here, this factory class here is taking all the responsibilities of creating the object. So he is aware of all the strong type objects. So in other words, tomorrow if you add a new type, you will just go and add one more if condition here. But when he returns this strong type, he will always return it as the parent base class. Polymorphism. Remember, the base of decoupling is polymorphism. So you can see now, tomorrow if I go and add a new type, he will always go and return only customer base. So my UI now can become something like this. So I can say here, so my UI will now go and refer the factory customer class or the library. So I will say here using factory customer, and then in the customer type, in the customer type selected event of the combo box, I can say here, please use the factory and create the object. So you can see now in my UI, I have no reference of the customer class. So you can see now, or the lead class, must be I can just search for the lead. So you can see there is no reference of the strongly typed classes, right? So you can see now by using this simple factory pattern, we are able to decouple the user interface from the strongly typed classes. So tomorrow, if somebody goes and adds a new customer type here, he has to just go and add that if condition here, and that's it. And all other consumers, so it can be a UI, it can be a batch process, it can be anyone, they don't have to worry, what kind of type is coming from the factory. The factory takes the responsibility of creating the object. Now there is one serious problem with this factory class, and the problem is the if condition. We somehow have to get rid of this if condition, and we need some better approach here. Now the good news is, if you have polymorphism in action, then you can get rid of the if conditions. So if you have polymorphism, and if you see lots of if conditions and case statements, that means polymorphism has not been exploited to the full. So over here what I can do is, I can go and delete this complete if condition, and I can go and create a very simple collection here of customer base type. So I can go and do something like this. I can go and create a collection base type of dictionary. Customer base is equal to new dictionary of customer base. And what I can do is in the constructor, I can go and add the strong types or the concrete type. So I can say here, okay, this is new customer and this is for lead, right? So now we can just go ahead and return the customer type by just doing a lookup. So we don't need now the if condition. So I can just say a return custs. Now remember that this custs here is a non-static variable, right? And inside the static methods, you can only access static variables. So we need to make it static. So I'll say cust of type cust, and he returns the type. Now you can see we don't need any more if condition. It can be just removed by simple lookup, and the lookup will work. Why? Because polymorphism is happening internally. So basically he will do a lookup, it will give out customer, but that will get automatically typed to a customer base, right? So over here now again, if you see, it's the same kind of output. Oh, there are some errors. Let us see what errors are there. Let me go and first rebuild this solution. Let us see what errors we have. Static classes cannot have instance constructors, so that is right. So basically this has to be static, right? So let me do a rebuild now again, and let me do a fi. So now if I do a lead, it looks up the collection and gives me back a lead type. If I do a lookup of a customer, so there is a customer, he again does a lookup, it goes, looks up, and it gives me a customer type. So you can see now we have a factory class centralized, all the new keywords are centralized there, and also we successfully got rid of that if condition. This getting rid of this if condition by using polymorphism is termed as RIP pattern. RIP means replace if with polymorphism. This centralization of object creation is termed as factory pattern. But remember that there are two kinds of factory pattern. One is what is discussed by Gang of Four, and this one here is a simple factory pattern. So this factory here is termed as a simple factory pattern. So what I'll do is, all over the project, I will just put this word design pattern, right? And I will put the name of the pattern, design pattern, and name of the pattern, so that tomorrow if you want to just go and see, if you just do a Control-Shift-I, and if you just search for design pattern, you should be able to straightforward go and see the references, right? Now this factory class can be improved in terms of performance. If you look at this moment, this customer collection is loaded irrespective you want it or you don't want it. I want that the customer type should be loaded only on demand. So in other words, when somebody calls this create method, at that time the customer collection should be loaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and Control X this. I will remove this constructor, and over here I will say if the cust.count is equal to 0, right, then go and load the types. So you can see that when somebody calls the create method, right, at that time only the customer types are loaded, or else they are not loaded without any reasons, right? This pattern is termed as lazy loading. So again, one more design pattern here, lazy loading. The opposite of lazy loading can be termed as eager loading. So lazy loading means when the objects are needed, they are loaded, or else they are not loaded. Okay, so you can see 3 design patterns we have covered at this moment: factory pattern, replace if with polymorphism, and lazy loading pattern. Now very quickly, I would like to make a statement here. One is you know design pattern. The other is you should know the automation for the design pattern. It is very important that if you have automation for the design pattern, you should be using that and not actually coding from scratch. So you can see here, for example, for lazy loading in C#, we have a keyword called as lazy. So rather than writing such kind of a if condition and then checking it and then loading it, you can just go and use that lazy keyword. So I would give this you as a homework. We have a video in Questpon VD which talks about the lazy keyword. So use that lazy keyword and replace this if condition of the lazy loading pattern here. Okay. So remember, one is you should know the pattern, and the other is in case there is some ready-made framework or some ready-made component, try to use that component, because components are time tested. You don't need to reinvent the wheel from scratch. So take this as a homework. Go ahead and replace this if condition of lazy design pattern by using the lazy keyword of C#. Now let us quickly go and test our application. So what I will do is, in the validate, we are already getting the type, right? So let us create a method here saying set customer, and so this method will say customer name is equal to txt customer name dot text cust dot phone number is equal to txt phone number dot text. This method here actually goes and takes a value from the UI and sets it to the object, right? So before I call the validate, I would like to just go and call this set customer here, right? And let us quickly go and test this. So basically, if he is a lead, then customer name is compulsory. So if he is a lead, then customer name is compulsory, right? There it is. If I put the customer name, phone number is also compulsory, but then address is not compulsory. So it is working. But the time I say this is a customer, right, then even the bill amount is required. It cannot be 0. Even the address is required. So you can see now, depending on what kind of type I'm selecting here, he is calling the factory. Factory gives him that type, and depending on the type, the validations are happening. And you can see, if I tomorrow go and add a new customer type, I don't have to make any change in the UI. In the UI, I just have to go and add that type over here. And only what I have to change is in the factory class. I need to go in the factory class and just go ahead and add the new type into my collection here, right? So this brings us to this 1 hour of learn design pattern step by step. And in this 1 hour, believe me guys, you have literally crossed the sea. Because I'm not teaching you design pattern step by step. I'm not teaching you design pattern academically. I'm teaching you design pattern practically. So once you see these examples, you will never forget, how to use design pattern in your project tomorrow. So basically, first we started with design pattern. We defined design pattern and we said that design pattern is nothing but learning object-oriented programming in a better way. So they are time-tested solutions for object-oriented programming problems. And then we said, that design pattern falls into 3 categories. One is the structural category, so at the time when we build our classes, when we write our entities, so any kind of problems, that occurs during that phase will be solved by using the structural design pattern category. Then we said, there is a second category called as creational pattern, which actually revolves around the new keyword. And then we said that there is something called as behavioral pattern, which actually talks about the problems around dynamic nature of objects. After that, we also defined what is the difference between design pattern, architecture pattern, and architecture style. Then we moved ahead and we identified the entities and the objects and the classes by using the noun, pronoun, and the verb approach. After that, we identified the relationship between these entities. We said that there are 2 kinds of relationships. One is a relationship, and one is a has a relationship. So one is using inheritance and the other is using, aggregation, association, composition. So it is more of a using relationship. After that, we went ahead and we created the UI. So we created the classes and properties, we created the UI. Then we said that, we are having problems with the new customer type. So we said that, if new customer types get added, then we have to make changes all over. So we went ahead and we created the simple factory class. The simple factory class is nothing but it actually collects all the new keyword into a centralized location. Afterwards, we moved ahead. We said that, okay, this simple factory class is looking good, but we need to replace that if condition. It had a if condition, and that if condition will increase, as new types gets added. So we replaced the if with polymorphism. That is the second pattern which we implemented, RIP. Third, we said, how about improving the performance of this factory class? So rather than loading the objects always, how about loading them on demand? So we implemented the lazy design pattern. So we have more 7 hours still pending. So let me talk about what I'm going to cover in the next coming hours. In the next coming hour, I will be covering something called a strategy pattern. Because if you look at this moment, the validations are tightly coupled with the entities. So we will look into that, how to use strategy pattern and improve on these validations. We will also see how we can go and automate the factory pattern class, the simple factory pattern class. Because at this moment, if you see, we are writing a collection, then we are doing a lookup and whatnot, right? But in reality, if you think about it, if you want to go and create a lot of these factories like this, you would end up into a lot of custom coding. So as I've said in this class also, one is the design pattern, and other is how to automate that design pattern. So also what we'll do in the coming hours is we'll try to automate that factory class. We'll try to remove that collection. We'll try to remove that lookup, right? And third, we will also implement some simple patterns like prototype pattern and memento pattern. So again, the next coming hour is more exciting. It is more adventurous, and we will be learning all of this design pattern practically and not just theoretically. And again, don't forget, in case you want to go and learn pattern by pattern, please go ahead and see this video series, where we have explained pattern by pattern. So you can take up one pattern, we have shown a sample code for it, you can understand it. Then there is a second pattern, third pattern, and so on. So if you want to learn pattern by pattern, go through that video series. If you want to really see patterns happening, then this is the video series which you have to go through. So thank you so much for bearing me for 1 hour. And if you really like this series, then again bear me for the next coming hour as well, right? So 7 hours still pending. And if you don't give up, then I will also not give up. Okay. So if you have the zeal to learn design patterns actually and practically, then I have the zeal to teach you. And in case you like this series, in case you like this 1 hour, what you have learned, please go to facebook.com/questpond and say that, okay, I completed 1 hour, I liked it, and I'm waiting for the other series. Or else, in case if you have any issues and concerns, you can also raise those concerns on the Facebook page. Thank you so much. So let us complete the 7 hours and let us become a real architect, and let us become a person who knows design pattern actually and not just theoretically. Thank you so much.